The following episode of the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters radio show was originally broadcast on April 6, 2021.
Aloha and good morning, Maui. Welcome to Business Matters radio show, sponsored by Mokulele Airlines and Sherry Reeve Gallery and Gifts. I'm your host, Pamela Tumbop, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce. And today we're going to have a fun and exciting show. We're going to get an update on the visitor industry. Boy, what a difference March makes. So we're going to talk about what's occurring this past month, recovery efforts, and a little bit about rental cars and what's happening there. On top of everybody's mind is affordable housing and rentals. And one of the big issues when it comes to affordable housing and rentals is this thing called the AMI, Area Median Income. And those levels impact where people qualify for different affordable housing and rental units. So it's very confusing for many, and people are always trying to understand this more and figure out where do they fit in. So we're going to learn a little bit more about that today. And we're going to hear from one of our small family businesses and Made in Maui County members from Exfolicare. So it's going to be a fun and exciting show. However, at the moment, we're waiting for our first guest to call in and arrive. So we are going to have with us today the Executive Director of the Maui Hotel and Lodging Association, Rod Antone, and he's been with the Maui Hotel and Lodging Association now for about a year and a half. Prior to that, Rod had been working as the Communications Director and Chief of Staff at the County of Maui. So he's very knowledgeable about, Maui County, our economy, and very much an expert in the visitor industry. And so any second now, I know it's early on a Tuesday morning, Rod should be calling in. But in the meantime, I'll just talk a little bit about some of the things that we've been hearing. And, a lot of people have said, from friends and family, everybody's saying, gosh, I was down in Kihei. Kihei was packed. Costco is really packed again. We're seeing the numbers increase, and it's a very exciting time. A while back, we got to hear from Dr. Carl Bonham. If you're not familiar with Dr. Carl Bonham, he's one of our leading economists in the state. He is with UHERO, the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization, and they put out some great reports telling us about what's happening in the economy, what's happening in housing, all of these different things that are really important to us. And if you look online, it's easy to find UHERO. It's UHERO. And they give us great information. But he had predicted earlier on that we were going to have a good bounce back at this time. And so, we're excited to hear about that. And now we've got Rod Antone on the phone. Good morning, Rod. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
So, leading the Maui Hotel and Lodging Association, we'd love for you to share what your members have been experiencing in the month of March. We're also hearing that the next few months look good. And so we wanted to hear about what the recovery efforts are looking like for you, not only what they did look like in March, but what are they looking like over the next several months?
Sure. We're looking at a slight increase in occupancy in April, on average, maybe around 60%. In May, it'll drop down slightly, maybe around 55% occupancy. And these are average numbers. The occupancy numbers vary from property to property, of course. But right. If we took an average of our largest hotels, and that's what they came out to be.
That's amazing. So we're still holding tight. Tell us a little bit about what March meant for them, and how were their numbers in March?
March, honestly, the recovery has been surprisingly better than expected. I think at some point last year, we were saying we might get to 50% occupancy by the end of 2021. So definitely, this was a surprise, a good surprise. And, I'd like to point out that Maui County's tourism industry, while, I know there are concerns about over-tourism and, managing tourism better. And that's all true, and we're all working towards that. But you've got to appreciate the resiliency
Absolutely.
of our tourism industry. And we saw that after the Great Recession. And, when I was at the county working for the mayor's office, we had bond ratings. And the bond ratings basically, let the county float a bond and borrow money for projects, and the better your bond rating is, the better deal you get, the better interest rate you get. And Maui's bond rating has always been a double A+, which is almost as high as you can get. We always tried for the triple A+, but the reason they kept on denying us, the bond raters, is because they said our industries, we didn't have more than one or two industries, agriculture and tourism, and now it's just tourism. At the same time, they said they gave us the second highest because our tourism, the one industry we did have, was very strong, very resilient. So, and it's it's showing it now.
That's so true. And another thing that I've always liked to say, especially was true coming out of 2008, the visitor industry has always shored up when other industries went out, when small businesses struggled to survive during the Great Recession, and those industries, unfortunately went out. The visitor industry always held strong and helped bring in employees when other, whether it was major industries or small businesses, went away, like HC&S. In the Great Recession, we saw Maui Pineapple Company. And so a lot of folks were able to be absorbed within that industry and keep their jobs. Get new jobs, but they were brought in and shored up by that. And this was a very interesting time, because in this time when we were shutting down, the visitor industry was shut down. So as we've been struggling to survive, we've really all been in this together, and yet we know that our industry knows how to come back strong, and we know there's a demand for Maui, yet we also know that we are still, as we move forward, we're, as you point out, we're working on all of these things to strengthen the industry, but in exciting and new directions, which were going on prior to this pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about some of the new directions?
Sure. So the one that's been in the news recently is there's a reservation system for the Wainapa Napa cabins in Hana. And it seems like a small place to start. But, the idea is eventually tourists will get on this reservation system and book their trip through Hana. And there's ideas like, okay, if you book your trip to this reservation system, then, you stop here and you get a banana bread on the side of the road, just show your QR code, and you can have lunch at this Thai restaurant, show your QR code, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason for that is if we have a reservation system, we can kind of control the flow into Hana, which is what our local population wants. They want some sense of control, especially on the road to Hana, which can be easily overwhelmed. Where we've seen, I've seen it myself with my own eyes. We have some visitors stopping in the middle of our very narrow Hana bridges to take selfies.
Yeah.
That would be enough to drive anybody crazy. That's, locals driving that use Hana Highway for business, maybe to deliver something to town, get to work, go to the doctors. So, that's one. The other thing is, maybe lottery systems to go to different attractions. Maybe tourists have to pay for parking at county parks. Some way to have some control and to generate some income to help support our infrastructure. I think definitely the hotels for sure are tired of keep on adding to the hotel bill. Okay, we've got this tax, we've got this impact fee, transit accommodation tax, all of it's, listed at the end of the bill, and it looks like the hotels are are just charging people more and more money when that's not the case. They're just being added to the bill. So we could do the collection of these fees, impacts in other parts of Maui County. That would be great, and also help with management.
Absolutely. And, you and I have been on different task forces where we've talked about, too, many of the people who come to Maui, in fact, most of the people who come to Maui, really have a love for the islands. And we've recognized that we haven't done enough to educate them and to teach them about our culture and sensitive areas and what's appropriate and what's not. And, there are going to be some who in the passion of wanting to get that selfie are doing some crazy things. But we've really made a movement to send out different messaging and to talk about our island and our environment and our culture, and to, encourage people to respect that and do new educational programs. And I'm really, that, as you and I know, that's been going on pre-pandemic. We were working on that back in 2019, about a year before we even heard anything about COVID. So I'm excited to see where that's all going and the new directions there.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the whole reason I got hired in 2019 was, we've got to better manage tourism, and, being local, graduating, living in Paia, growing up in Paia, I mean, we saw the impacts of tourism. We saw our town change, and, we get all sorts of tourist traffic, the Haleakala downhill bicycle riders, the people driving a Hana, people coming here to windsurf, and it's a bustling town, but it needs to be managed, and just like the rest of Maui. Otherwise, we as local population will get frustrated. We have been frustrated. We will get overwhelmed. Our infrastructure will be taxed. So it's really for all of us. And I always point this out. Tourism impacts tourism.
Yes.
I know that sounds funny, but think about this. If there's traffic on the highway, on the Pali, going to Hana, and the hotel's own employees from Central Maui cannot get to work,
right?
There you go. You know what I mean? Right. So I mean, everybody's everybody's a stakeholder here. Everybody's got something that they need to have improved in our industry, and we want to do it before legislators do it for us. Not to say they don't have good ideas sometimes, but it's better if the industry regulates the industry, or at least has a say.
Absolutely. I love that you brought up Paia, because I was saying to friends and different people I was talking to in a group the other day that, we used to say the trickle-down effect of the visitor industry in Maui County was about 75%. The Chamber used to say that. And the truth is, there's really no good data. And that number was something that had been around for quite some time. And, now with COVID, we would say it's 90+%. And we have stories of the impact that the downturn in our visitor industry with COVID-19, not only does it affect the hotels and the activity business and the wedding and event businesses, and agriculture, of course, is a huge part of that, and restaurants and retail, but all the way down to, as we would go to local hair salons. I mean, many of us didn't get a haircut for a very long time. But even the small salons who, for social distancing, had to only use a few of their chairs, and then people who would come in once a week for a haircut maybe would come in once a month. So we know how impactful the industry was, and on that local level, as you kind of point out how it impacts us all, what the gal at the hair salon was saying to me is, my customers are not visitors. My customers are the local folks who are working for the visitor industry. And, they're not coming in because they've been laid off. So, it's really important that, in this time of, I call it the time of great renewal, we're already prepared.
Oh, not bad, Pam. You might want to copyright that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll go work on that right now. But we went from the recession, and now we're in this time of renewal, and And, as you say, we're all needing to work together and come together to create a really wonderful industry that supports our community. Well, as we look and as we have, we diversified around that industry. We just know that we need to continue to do some of the diversification as well, but in concert, because it's not this or that. It's how do we bring things together to leverage opportunities that are most appropriate for our county. But when
and the visitor industry wants a diverse economy, because guess what? The more industries that pop up in Hawaii, the more diverse we get, the better it is for our industry. Because guess what? They're going to have conventions, and they're going to need some place to meet, and they might need meeting rooms. I mean, we'll definitely benefit. I like to point to Colorado, where I went to college. They had, high tech. They've got some natural resources that they export. They've got business, and they've got a booming a ski and snowboard industry, and now they've got recreational marijuana use. They've truly got a very diverse economy, and I would love to see Maui County have something like that. We all would.
We do. And, again, for future jobs, for future generations, we're wanting STEM. We want jobs that provide higher living wages, and so it's important. But right now, a lot of those higher living wages are at the visitor industry. And it's really important that we bring our industry back, and we're exciting. I was in Paia a few months ago, and I remember, still seeing so many stores boarded up. And I was back in Paia 1st of March, and we were doing a little filming with a news crew, and it was bustling. I mean, Paia was just bustling. The majority of the shops were reopened. They had staff. Of course, they were social distancing on how many people could come in at a time. But, you talk about our small towns and that, what that industry means to Paia as well. And again, traffic and some of these things we have to continue to mitigate and work on. But I was thrilled and to meet with the shop owners who were so excited with March. And that's part of what happened to businesses after we had this great 2019. Many businesses invested in the coming March. We came off a phenomenal year of 2019. They made huge investments in their store for 2020, expecting a very robust visitor industry, which we all expected. And then COVID hits, and we had people who had mass inventory and layoffs. And so it was nice to see this March and the rebound.
Yeah, no. I will say, I don't know how much time do we have left.
We've got a few minutes. Go ahead.
Great. I'd like to talk now about, there are some negative effects to our success. And when I say negative, I mean there's challenges. Whenever you achieve a goal greater than you thought it was going to be, you might have to make some adjustments. And unfortunately on Maui, what we're seeing is the rest, while the hotels and the accommodations industry are handling the tourists, the other suppliers to tourism are being kind of overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. There's not as many tours available for the tourists. And if they are, like on a boat, they've got half the occupancy. There's no taxis available, Ubers or for whatever reason, not as available. People can't get to their tours, I'm hearing. If they book them, we've got the 30% occupancy limit at restaurants, so restaurants fill up very fast. There's no there's no place for people to eat, and that affects locals too, especially in the west and south sides.
Absolutely.
It's everything surrounding our accommodations. They've really been stretched thin, and Mayor Victorino's doing his best. There's a balance. He's got to listen to Department of Health and the health officials at Maui Health Systems, and he's got to make decisions based on that. He's also got to look at, if folks can eat and do they have a job that gives them medical, and so he's got to keep an eye on the economic side. It's a real tightrope he's walking. But, the MHLA is working with them, and we're hoping the numbers, the COVID case numbers go down and get to a point where he says, all right, we can raise occupancy in our restaurants at least from 30 to 50%. So that's, something that's ongoing.
Absolutely. Hey, Rod, also, if you don't mind sharing, talk a little bit about, because everybody's been floored to see skyrocketing rental car numbers. And, of course, it's not just happening here. It was reported on national news as well. Talk a little bit about the rental car situation and how, what causes that.
Remember during the shutdown, all the unused rental cars that were parked on the side of the road, behind the old Kmart and all that stuff. At some point, Enterprise is one of MHLA's members, and they said, well, because people weren't flying on the mainland, they were driving. They were driving from state to state.
Right.
And so the increase for interstate rental, a motor vehicle rental went up. So they took a great number of rental cars on Maui, thousands. I wish I want to say 7,000.
Wow.
And they shipped it to the mainland. And I don't think those cars came back. I know people are starting to complain about traffic again, but this is not the same inventory we had before. And if Enterprise did it, I can't imagine that the others didn't do it too. I'm sure Budget and the rest of them did the same shipping of their inventory to the mainland. So, less, law of supply and demand. You've got a high demand, but low supply, and so everything's very valuable, and, you're going to pay through the nose for a car.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting time, and of course, when we're here in Maui, we sometimes think, oh, we're alone in that, and then you see it on the national news that other, across the country, they're saying that same thing, and I appreciate you explaining that it's more
and
driving interstate.
We may not get those cars back for a while because, if you're making money on the mainland.
Yes.
And you could make money on Maui, but to do that, you got to ship thousands of cars here. Is it worth it? Is it worth the overhead, or should you just keep your cars on the mainland where they are making money? So, that's where we are right now.
Wow, Rod. You are always a wealth of information. I'm so glad that you joined us this morning. Thank you for sharing what's going on in the visitor industry and helping us understand what's been going on with the rent-a-cars. We deeply appreciate the amazing work you're doing.
I'm very sorry for the late call in. I thought it was 7:10. And I looked at my email again, and it said, "Oops," and
No worries.
My apologies. But, I tried to cover as much as I could with the time we had left.
You did a great job, as always. You did a great job. We're thrilled to have you this morning. Thank you. I know your time is precious, and thank you so much for being on with us.
No problem. Thank you, Pam.
You bet. Have a wonderful day. As we say aloha to Rod, he is always such a treasure who can share. I'm fascinated by Rod. He can really share on any subject. He has such a great history with working in our county. And speaking of another person who has a wonderful history in working with our county, we are so excited to have Linda Munzel. Linda is the Deputy Director for the County of Maui Department of Housing and Human Concerns. And we've had a chance to, over the years, work with Linda on our, Affordable Housing and Rentals Forum. And she, too, is a wealth of information in the housing area. So, good morning, Linda. Thank you for joining us. I hear you on the phone.
Hi, good morning, Pam. Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to come on with you and talk a little bit about housing. I always appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you, and you are so versed in this, and we are so excited to have you on today because as you will know, housing and affordable housing and rentals, and the mayor refers to them as attainable housing and rentals, is on everybody's mind. It's a growing thing that we need to address, and we have this issue of this AMI that many people don't understand, and so we're so excited to have you help people understand what is the AMI, how does it affect housing and rentals, and how do people figure out where they fit into this?
Right. Yeah, we talk a lot about area median income or AMI levels a lot. Really what that means is that in a specific area, 1/2 of the household incomes in that area are above this amount, and 1/2 of the household incomes are below that amount. So, for example, in 2020, the area or family median income for Maui County was $97,500. And so what that means is that half of Maui County households earn more than $97,500, and half of the households earn less than $97,500. And it's not an average. It's, counting how many households above and how many households below. And I know everyone also talks about that that's not possibly true. Our households, our families are made up of folks who are not necessarily in high-paying jobs. So while each individual person in a household might not make about $100,000 a year, typically a household is made up of multiple people and multiple people who have jobs. And so when you add all of those jobs together in one household, then you start to approach that 97,500 number that we always talk about.
And when we talk about households, we have multi-generation living. Are we counting, is there a limit to how many people can be in a household uncounted? Do we count all the adult incomes in that?
Yeah, there's not a limit to the number of people that are in the households. I mean, and here in Hawaii, it's very common for you to have your parents living with you, or, maybe you've got a brother or a cousin, and all of those incomes are going to count towards the household income. In fact, if you look at the last survey that was done for us, they talked about the households who are doubling up, who, because of the cost of living here, because of the cost of housing here, there are more people in a household, and so when you add all of those incomes together, that's how we end up with these numbers that you're seeing.
So Linda, who sets this area median income? It sounds like, because we're really taking into account our local data, it sounds like it's very local, but many people say there's HUD standards that come into this.
Yeah, so every year, HUD actually does publish AMI figures numbers for every county and every metropolitan area in the U.S. And generally the numbers are published in April or May. So the new numbers will come out right around this time of year. But those numbers are actually based on an ACS or American Community Survey data. So everyone who is listening this morning, if you ever get an income survey, I truly encourage you to complete that and respond to it, because these numbers are based on the data that these surveys get back, and those numbers are used to average, and they use a 5-year average, and then they do an inflation index. So I think the 2020 number, the 97,500, is based on data that was from 2013 through 2017. And there's this massive calculation that they use, and then they do an inflation index to make up for the 3 years that they are behind in that. And that's how they come up with these numbers. But it's done for every county and every large metropolitan area in the United States.
So one of the parts of the equation is this AMI and what your household income is.
Right.
And then we look at different levels, percentages of, where people fall on the housing rung ladder. Can you talk a little bit about those housing percentages and how people can understand where do they actually fall and what level of income takes them from maybe affordable rentals into affordable home ownership?
Right. Well, so, everybody always gets excited about the $95,000, $97,000 number, and that's really not the number that they need to be looking at. What they need to be looking at is, all right, if I am planning to buy a house or I'm planning to rent a house, it's what is my income plus whoever's going to live with me. So maybe I'm planning to leave, and live with my spouse or my boyfriend, and I want to get a home of my own. Generally, we'll look at you're going to be looking at a chart typically. So we use the $97,000 number as a starting point, and then we go down from there. And what we're asking for is, or typically expected or assumed to be affordable, is that we expect typically that someone is going to pay 30% of their income for their housing. And what that 30% number allows is that you should have enough money left over after paying 30% for your housing to pay for other expenses, well, at least the non-discretionary ones, such as food and transportation and medical expenses and those kinds of things, so that you can actually have comfortable, survivable way of living. And so when we're looking at folks and their incomes, we're actually looking at people who earn less than 80% or less of the AMI, and right now that would be about $78,000. Those folks are generally going to be renting, and they're going to be trying to prepare, if they're interested in doing so, in buying a home. So they're doing their savings, they're doing other things, and so they're looking for rental properties where they can spend about 30% of their income for their cost of living and then have the rest of the money left over to pay their other expenses. And folks that are 80% and above, and typically it's a little bit challenging from about the 80% to the 100% AMI levels for them to purchase a house, but they're hopefully getting, prepared to do that. And then folks that are over the 100% AMI, so the folks that are making about $97,000, we're expecting that those people are going to be wanting to buy a home that, again, they can afford. And what they can afford is going to vary for everyone. So you need a range of houses at a range of prices and a range of rentals so that everyone can actually afford to live here.
Yeah, and boy, it's an ever-increasing challenge. We've talked a little bit about how our median home prices are going up, but that's related. But also, I don't know if the February numbers have come out. I haven't seen them, but I know January was $980,000. And so, if people also hear that news and say, my gosh, it's so hard and it's not attainable, which, is the point that we keep talking about.
Right.
So we have all these different levels of housing. How do we get to when somebody figures out where they're at on that ladder in terms of, are they above or below the 97.5 and what percentage they're at? How does that then equate to housing prices and levels of affordability on those units that we're having built in Maui County that are meant to be more affordable?
Right.
How is that determined?
Well, that's an interesting question. So let's separate what's happening in the market right now from what our charts will say are going to be affordable to various people. So what happens is there's a calculation that's done. Again, we're trying to target the 30% of your income to be used for housing, either that's purchase or rent. And then if you're purchasing a house, we also have to look at what the interest levels, what does a mortgage actually cost you right now? And I think that the mortgage rates are very, very low. We have used a floor. Let's say we don't go below about 4%. So we do a calculation of, what is the mortgage and interest on, or the principal and interest payment for a home, and it cannot exceed 30% of your income. And then there's a calculation that says, okay, if you're going to put 5% down for that home, this is the price that you could afford, or this is the mortgage that you could afford on your income. And so it's kind of a backwards calculation, but we end up with, okay, this is the maximum sales price that a person who earns $97,000 can actually afford at 4% interest. And, right now, and it also depends, there's a few factors like how many bedrooms and things like that. But we assume that somebody who's earning $97,000 and buying a 3-bedroom home could actually afford to purchase a house that's about $537,000 in sales price. Now, that's completely different than what is happening on the market right now. I mean, I think you would be very fortunate to find a home that's in the 535 range, but that's what the target is, and that's what, when we're working with developers who have to provide affordable housing or workforce housing, we're setting some of those sales prices and saying you must sell a certain number of those homes in these price ranges so that the people who live and work here can actually afford to buy them.
So that's very interesting, Linda. So the levels and the pricing are worked out between the county and the developer to make sure that they're being responsive to the marketplace.
Well, yeah, the law, so we've got certain ordinances that developers who want to develop have to follow. And, yeah, there's a certain percentage that we actually dictate that say you must make these workforce units. And in order to do that, because the cost of building is very, very high,
yes,
they also need to be able to sell some of those homes at market in order to make up, because essentially they're subsidizing the cost.
Right.
Right now you say that the price of a home is about $900,000. I'm not sure what it costs to actually build that, but I do know that the price of lumber has doubled in the last, year, certainly, and might be much shorter than that. So the cost to develop them and build them is higher. So the market units have to subsidize the ones that we require them to sell at a lower price.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because we've heard with the forest fires that had occurred on the mainland, the price of lumber was soaring, but also a lot of supplies are going up in the building industry, and of course for us being in remote islands, that all those supplies come across by water, everything's going up exponentially. It's a very challenging time for us, and so that has an impact too. So that gets dealt with in this, sort of there's a formula, but also it sounds like you're looking at the different levels and working with the developer to understand some of those issues, and then some of the things it sounds like maybe they just have to figure out and absorb how they work within the program.
Right.
So I had an interesting story that I wanted to ask you about, Linda, because a gentleman who is a bank branch manager here on island was sharing that he and his wife had, gone through the affordable housing the housing process, and they were looking at a housing price of $450,000 at that time, and they determined that their income was $3,000 over. So they didn't quite make it.
Right.
They were over, and then the next jump in housing for them was $100,000 higher for what they then qualified for. So I wanted to understand a little bit about that. They were saying, well, can I donate $3,000? How do we can't make that next jump. What do we do? So I wanted to have you share, if you can, a little bit about, these different levels and
right.
where the breaks are, and is there anything within our county local control that we can do to mitigate some situations like this?
Yeah, that's going to be a challenging situation. So the way that our pricing guidelines are is they are only guidelines, right? So we actually dictate to the developer that they have to sell certain numbers of units in each income category, but their pricing is somewhat determined by them. We set the maximum. That's not the price you have to sell it at. That's the maximum price that you can sell it at. So, in the situation of your branch manager, they were not able to qualify at the lower AMI, and the developer was able, and that's a legitimate price that they're allowed to sell. They would jump up into the next price bracket, and sometimes it is a very large jump. What they can do about it, boy, I don't know. I mean, the rules. I mean, we need to treat people fairly and the same. And that's a challenging one, Pam. I do not have a great answer for that one.
Well, that's okay. That's what we're, excited to bring up, because I was floored. It was the first time I'd heard that, but
yeah.
I can't imagine it's the only time it happens. So I was excited, not excited to hear it in the sense of course, it's a tragedy, but excited to hear it because I hadn't heard it before. And if we don't know what we don't know, then we're not working on it.
Right.
And so I thought, well, this is something that we can start bringing up and having discussions on, because again, I'm sure if it's impacting him, it's impacting others.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Linda, we're getting close to wrapping up, but I just wanted to, is there anything else that you'd like to share or feel would be helpful for people to know as they're trying to understand more about how they can get an affordable home or rental, understanding the AMI and how their family's income relates to the different options? Where can people go to get additional information and help?
Well, so, I mean, obviously if they've got questions or they're looking for affordable rentals, I mean, if they contact the Housing Division, and they can go to the county website and go to the Housing Division, and they do have lists of affordable rental units that are out there. Sometimes there's wait lists on those units, but, if they get their name in and on that list. But also to keep their eyes open for projects that are being developed, new projects. One of the things that the Housing Division is going to do is add to their website a link so that you can actually see what's being developed and who to contact. So make it a little bit easier for our residents to find these units as they come on board, and to see into the future. Right, maybe it's not this year, but maybe it's going to be, next year, and they can see what's coming and who to contact. And I think we can make that a little bit easier for people.
I really think that that's exciting, and I'm glad that you folks are doing that. And, we want people to understand this, because we've also heard stories where people were on a housing list, but it took, it takes time to move up on the list and the units to get built. And right about the time they're getting close, maybe they've bought another asset, like a vehicle, or maybe they've lost a job and are unemployed, or something has changed. And then the dynamic changes, and they're not in the position they were in when they first signed up. So there's new educational programs. We're working on that. There's a plan that's being studied now that the council invested in, and we're excited. It's going to take a few months, but we're excited to look at this holistically. And the Department of Housing and Human Concerns has been such an asset to this community. And Linda, the work that you and Lori and the team do, we deeply appreciate all of your efforts to work in, and you folks are fiercely staunch advocates for getting us more affordable housing and rentals, and we greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Pam, and really, I really appreciate having the opportunity to come and talk with you and share information. And anytime that you want us to come on, you've got questions, we're happy to be here, and just so much appreciate you getting the word out and doing shows like this. It's very much appreciated.
Oh, it's our great pleasure. Thank you so much, Linda. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Pam. You too.
Thank you. Bye. Aloha. I just so glad to have Linda on. I wanted to also recognize our title sponsors. We have Mokulele Airlines and Sherry Reeve Gallery and Gifts in Makawao. If you haven't been to Sherry's studio for a while, you might want to get back. She always has new and exciting products on the market. I believe is Ruby on. I'm looking at Gary, our technician. He's looking at me, and I'm so excited. I want to introduce we call her the soap chef. It's Ruby McCouche, and after working in the food service industry for 35 years alongside chefs on a daily basis, Ruby realized that she too could be a chef, but her recipes are to nourish the outside of our bodies. Good morning and hello, Ruby.
Good morning, Pam. How are you?
I am excellent. How are you today?
We're good. I'm good.
You know, you are always such a great inspiration. I've gotten to meet Ruby and her husband many years back through the Made in Maui County Festival, and I love that you talk about being a chef for the outside of our bodies. I know you've got so many different recipes and so many things going on. Tell us a little bit about your products and what inspired you to create these amazing things to nourish our bodies.
Well, you know, it all started back when my husband was hurt several years ago, and his rehab was him having to do what he did for a living, which was cook. So he took over the kitchen. I love to cook. I didn't have a chance to get in the kitchen because he took it over. So I started cooking things on the side, and it turned out to be I started cooking soap. And it just evolved into something that I made it mainly for myself because I traveled a lot, and I wanted something that I could take with me because the hotel soap bars sometimes are a little bit drying. So I created something that was convenient and moisturizing. So I came up with my Exfoli Body, which is my loofah soap. It's unique and different from any other loofah soap on the market. Because I mold the loofah to the side of the soap, so you don't always have to use the loofah when you're using the soap. So anything I do, I like to be unique and different from others out there, so that we all have a little bit of share of the market. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
So really, it started for me, you know, because I wanted something for myself, and I couldn't cook. So I cooked up soap. And I, like I said, my day job for 30 some odd years was working with chefs, and so I kind of took their title there for a minute for making soap.
And you also have the other unique scrubber that gets under your fingernails.
That one's for the feet, and I call that Exfoli Feet. And I was inspired by the islands in terms of all of our wonderful natural ingredients with pumice and sand, and I've incorporated those into the scrubber for your feet. I don't take anything from the islands. I buy everything, cosmetic grade, and I incorporate it into my soap bar. It's molded in the form of a massage bar, and then I also preform in a nail scrub bar. So it's wonderful to keep your feet nice and soft. And, if you're in construction or you're an artist, you can use it on your hands, too. It really helps to get the grime and things out of your fingernails.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, given that Sherry Reeve Gallery and Gifts, a great artist, is one of our title sponsors. So that's good to know. Great for the artists as well. I had never thought about that, but...
Well, my sister's an artist, so she uses it all the time, yep.
Yeah, well, that's great that you made that connection. I'm so glad because we have such a huge art community here in Maui.
Yes, we do, yep.
So, but you've got a whole line of products. The last time I met you, you gave me a sample of the elbow cream. Oh, my goodness, for my dry elbows. It's so amazing.
I have to tell you, with the way that things are now and everybody using hand sanitizer, my coconut cream has been in high demand. And not just on Maui. It's I've got calls from all over the country. Just people are... My hands are all dried out from this. I got to have your coconut cream. And, I developed a formula that and I'm not going to change it because it works. It's a mixture of pure coconut oil cream with macadamia nut oil. And it just really, really works well. I like to keep the natural oils.
Yeah.
Some of the other things I'm starting to, I've always used natural ingredients. Papaya seeds. I've got neighbors that are both growing papayas right now that are just giant. And as soon as they're ripe, they're going to be giving me their papayas. But what I do is not only just eat the papaya because it's good for you, but I scoop out the seeds and I dry those out and grind them up, and I put those in scrubs and in soaps as well. Because the nutrients in the papaya is good for your skin, the outside of your body, just as it is in the inside of your body.
I've heard during this pandemic, and it's certainly been true for me, we've been so busy. Everybody's been trying to, keep their business afloat and make sure our family's okay. And we've forgotten in many ways to take care of ourselves. And it's really important to always say, remember the airline adage, you first have to take care of yourself so you can take care of others. And you offer so many phenomenal products that help us rejuvenate our skin, take care of ourselves, feel better. Dry skin is one of those awful things. So to hear people far and wide from the mainland are wanting that product is pretty amazing. Ruby, where can people find these amazing products? And quickly tell us, how do we get a hold of all the things that you have to offer that care for our skin and our well-being?
Well, in a couple local locations here in Kihei, Sunkist Wahine, Take Home Treasures, they both stock my products. Over Lahaina side, Ono Gelato, both locations, they've got my products. And then all islands, the Blue Ginger stores, and I'm in all the airports on each island. So if you're leaving the island and you want a great gift, you can snag one at the airport. And then there's always my website, which carries everything, and that's exfolicare.com.
Okay, spell it for everybody so they get it right.
EXFOLICARE.com. And it's all about exfoliating and taking care of your body.
Ruby, you are a treasure, and your products are amazing.
Thanks, Pam.
And, I'm so glad it sounds like you've been doing well. Has everything, how have things been during this pandemic?
It's been a struggle. I'll admit it. I really haven't had to make a whole lot of soap. I just started producing soap again these last few weeks because the majority of my retailers were closed.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to produce to supply. So, but the good thing about soap is the longer it sits, the better it is. Truly, So I'm happy to say I'm back in production because everybody's opening back up, and it's been a struggle. But you know what? It's been a struggle for everyone, and we've all muddled through, and we're going to get there. We're almost to the other side.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's the thing,
Yeah.
Ruby, you're such a bright spirit in the world, and you're always positive and energetic. And
oh, thanks, Dan.
Well, so true. And, but we also recognize that people have struggled, and I think you've done a great job. It's lovely to know, though, at least in some cases I've talked to people, and the longer they sit, they can't really use the inventory in time. So I'm glad that soap gets better with age. Ruby, I'm going to have to say thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's been
I always appreciate when I get your phone call.
Oh, love talking to you. Thank you, Ruby. This is Business Matters, brought to you by our sponsors, Mokulele Airlines and Sherry Reeve Gallery and Gifts. I'm Pamela Timpot, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce, wishing you blessings and best wishes for a beautiful Maui day.